Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Sprites of Life podcast. I'm Lucas.
Chris.
I'm Don.
Glad to have you guys back. Guys, thanks so much for doing the episode at the conference. I appreciate it.
Hey, we just always an excuse to get Don to rant about fishing.
I really do wish they made more ice fishing games.
We also found out, it came up that Pokemon actually has a startling lack of actual water ice fish.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until going through and editing the episode of there has to be something I could put here for the art of this. Wait, no, it's all wrong.
It's
None of it works.
Arctivish.
Again, it's all wrong. Arctivish is not a fish. It's a mistake. All right. So today's episode, we are going to talk about one of my favorite franchises. But first, I want you to look at this picture in the general chat.
Mm,
What do you feel when you see this picture?
intimidated.
Intimidated?
Pride and the glory to purge Xenos. I think that's important, right?
Don wins. Chris, you have been killed for your heresy against the God Emperor of Man.
I just hear like Sabaton lyrics like playing in my head when I look at this image.
This is the God Emperor of Man. This is the Warhammer 40k episode. I have been holding back and waiting until Henry Cavill signed on the dotted line with Amazon to make this a thing. Now that we not only have a bunch of new Warhammer games out and a bunch of new shows and other properties potentially going to be great or terrible, we'll figure it out when we get there. Oh, it's happening. Oh, I'm so excited. And I wanted to do my take, because if you can go on YouTube right now, you will find a bajillion different videos about the lore, because the game series and the franchise has been around for almost 50 years now. It's getting closer and closer to 50 years. But no one talks about the biology. No one talks about how right or wrong the biology of this franchise is. So that's what I want to share with you guys and get your thoughts on it when I explain it. That seemed fine. All right. Now, before we learn of the God Emperor and the many forces that seek to destroy his glorious Imperium, we need to talk a little bit of science news. Now, Don, you might be more familiar. Are you aware that we keep studying sharks to make new things in technology and science?
I mean, I'm not too surprised. I know their denticles have been like that design has been they've it's on like medical tools to prevent bacterial growth.
Turns out they found yet another thing to do with shark bodies. Not only did they use the denticles for hydrodynamics and aerodynamics, they also found a way to use it for plumbing.
Oh,
So,
What sharks are known for?
so the sharks have a problem. When they are eating their food, they need to make sure that it doesn't make its way back up as it's being digested. They need to try and get every scrap of nutrients out of the food they eat, given that sharks only eat 2 to 3 times a month. So, inside their intestinal tract, they have internal spirals that are just there, built into their intestine, that help produce a more one-way flow. This is a problem that we have with general plumbing. Like, if you're thinking about the way I found this scientific article was, imagine the plumbing in your faucet. How do you make sure that the water is going that one straight direction and not backing and forward with dirtier water? Like, how does that work? And normally we have to use a lot of faucets and a lot of special piping. But this one group of scientists decided to test out what would happen if you could make something similar to that of a shark's. So these are some of the designs they tested on the tubes. You can see the spirals on the inside, a bunch of different shapes. Guess which one worked? Just random guess. There's no clue or hint.
The middle one.
Middle one, Don.
Yeah.
I
Middle
like
one.
the one on the right.
Trick question. Everyone's correct. All of them worked better. All of them were able to keep the water flowing at one way, more so than just the control. So they all work, which is amazing. This is the kind of little bit of technology I love, because no one cares about plumbing. So much so that we pay plumbers a disgusting amount of money so we don't have to think about our plumbing. I just love the idea that it's coming from an animal that most people don't like to think about, going into something we already don't like to think about. And in the future, we could have better plumbing and cheaper plumbing because of this, which I think is neat. Yeah. Thank you, Sharks. Thank you for
Thank
making
you,
sure my
Sharks.
faucet. This is now the Thank You Shark podcast. Okay. On the note of thanking and all that crud, did y'all catch any of the trailers from the Game Awards?
Yeah, I saw the highlights.
I saw, yeah, more highlights. I saw the Elden Ring spinoff, and I saw, was it Elden Ring Night Rain? I saw
Yeah, I
Borderlands
wanted your
4.
thoughts on that. I wanted your thoughts on the Elden Ring thing.
So, from what I've seen a little bit of it, it's kind of a crazy concept. It sounds like it's like you can play it single player as well, but it's like a roguelike, and it's like over a 3-day cycle. At the end of each day, I think you and your friends fight a boss. I think there's like classes and revive mechanics though. And the map gets smaller on the third day. There's like a big boss or something, from what I took away from it. But it seems like it's kind of meant to be more of a fun thing. Because from the trailer we saw characters or things from other Souls games. Like you see a big one, you see Nameless King from Dark Souls 3. So this seems like it's kind of more of a sort of a fan servicey fun side game, which I think it'd be a kind of a fun little super crossover if they had like a little bit of all the sort of Soulsborne universe. Like it'd be crazy to one night like night falls and then you and your teammates have to fight like the Orphan of Kos or something from Bloodborne. The combat speed would make that hellish.
So, given the community around Elden Rings, how likely is it that when you're put into a game, someone's just going to screw around and try and kill you instead?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they do that if they were gonna have like a PvP component or friendly fire. 'Cause in like Elden Ring right now and the other Souls games, barring a couple specific covenants in Dark Souls 3 and maybe 2, like the Mad Phantoms, you can't hurt your teammates. So I would imagine there wouldn't be a friendly fire.
Gotcha. So, with Borderlands 4, again, they were saying like
Oh,
it's
and
going to
we have
blow
the
your mind.
Illuminate and Helldivers too. We have the Space Squids.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've been playing with the Helldivers one. I hate
I haven't
fighting
gotten to
them. So
play yet.
naturally,
I haven't gotten to play yet.
we'll find some time this weekend, Don, if you can, because I hate fighting them because I like fighting. They actually fight back, and it's like, oh, hang on now. I'm gonna have to change my loadout. I went in with the wrong loadout the first time around, so then I had to go back and deal with them. But I feel kind of bad that they announced the Jeep for Helldivers too, but it's behind like the Battle Pass. I was just like, oh man,
Oh, it's
I
behind
wanted
the
to get.
newest War Bond or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw the $10 at it this time around. I want to kind of see how it plays out. Uh-huh. Either way. But yeah, Borderlands 4 got announced.
You
I
can
saw the
grind out the
trailer.
credits pretty fast too.
I guess you could. But yeah, Borderlands looked good. I'll need to see it up close
I'm
again,
deeply
but like
skeptical.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna be an optimist, but I can see where the skepticism can come from.
Well, part of it, and maybe I'm just being, nostalgia and all that. I feel like the vault. I don't. I mean, maybe we get a better power showcase and stuff. The Vault Hunter designs just feel very like, I don't know, a little more bland. I don't know, like all the last ones, every character seems a lot more distinguished, like more colorful, and they just seem kind of all muted. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, there's big guy and there's not big guy and stuff, but compared to how like sort of like almost colorful some of the older ones were.
Mhm. Well, again, I think Borderlands 3 doesn't get enough credit for having like that mix of like, hey, you have an automaton, you have a magic punching person. Like they had some differences. I guess we'll have to see how the classes play out.
The play. I mean, my complaints about Borderlands 3 never had anything to do with how it played.
Mhm.
The
It was
gameplay,
always
I thought
about
Borderlands 3 had some of the best gameplay, but some of the other Borderlands-ness wasn't quite as my favorite, I
yeah.
guess.
Gotcha. So the winner of the whole shebang that was Astrobot for PlayStation. So everyone got happy. There was one person who was decidedly unhappy. Did you see the response from the producer of Black Myth Wukong?
No.
It's pretty bad. So again, Black Myth Wukong was like the first major Chinese studio to ever make it to the Game Awards, first AAA game to get there. They got to win a few different awards. They got at least one of them. I know that much. But apparently they expected to win Game of the Award so badly that the producer said that he wrote an acceptance speech 2 years ago. Like he just had this idea that he's going to win. Oh, hang on, I found the quote. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. The 4 nominations were first for Chinese game. Fang noted with justified pride. Yet I must admit that there's a sense of loss and regret. More than anything, they're letting go of illusions. So yeah, Chris, Don, I don't know about y'all. That did not seem like a man who is okay with losing Game of the Year.
A little something.
Oh, here's the rest of it. I feel like I came all this way for nothing. Just like, wow, dude. I dipped my toes in the fighting game community, and so the Virtua Fighter announcement was met with pretty high acclaim. Clive from Final Fantasy 16 and Tekken was met with like a okay, I guess. And I think the last announcement for the night that I really liked was that Naughty Dog is working on a new game. And Naughty Dog is a special place in my heart from my childhood playing Jack and Daxter. And I'm so glad that they stopped working on The Last of Us because it's like, guys, you've been working on it for 10 years and you just keep making more of it. Please find something else. Please, it's got its TV show, but I'm so glad to see that they're doing something different. I think this is going to be really cool. That has a sick title of Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, which is just, I don't know, that kind of brings me in.
Intergalactic planetary.
Yeah, that's immediately where my head went.
Okay. Speaking of intergalactic, are you ready to learn some Warhammer lore?
Teach me where
Hit me.
isn't it like librarian or something, like a high tier psychic dude or something?
Librarians are Space Marine psychers. Yes.
So yeah, I was gonna say
Okay.
teach me.
Yeah,
I needed
let
a
me
good
see.
thing to call you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want you to just guess. This is just a number. How many Warhammer 40K novels are available for purchase? Like just novels.
I'm gonna say like 95.
500.
Okay. There are, depending on your definition, because some of these are shorter, some of them are like hour long, others are 18 hours long. There are over 300 books
I was pretty
for the
close.
Warhammer.
I knew I went low as soon as I
It's
said it.
a lot. Yeah, but you still didn't go over, so you win. It's the biggest franchise from a fictional standpoint that I know of, and I would not be doing this justice by just saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to talk about all the lore." For those listening, there's Adeptus Ridiculous, there's Luton, there's Kirioth, there's a lot of people out there who will tell you all the lore you want to know in as much detail. I'm just going to run through it real quick. Warhammer is all about the grim dark future of 40,000 years from now. When I say grim dark, there is no peace, there's only war, and every single faction is some kind of evil. Every single one.
There's zero good guys.
There are only different flavors of evil. So the God Emperor, in his grace and glorious power, showed up in humanity's darkest hour about, I think it was 28,000 years ago, like the 28,000 century, 28K, whatever. He basically showed up, reunited Earth after it had fallen to collapse from like AI going nuts. Before that, humanity had this massive, sprawling, amazing galactic empire. The Emperor shows up and he's like, all right, everyone, follow me. We're going to take the galaxy. We're going to kill all the aliens because they will threaten any of our greatness. And I am going to not do this alone. I will make my own sons through science and a bit of magic nonsense that you don't need to know about. And we are going to, rise humanity up. For a while, it worked.
I
The,
respect anyone who can fuse
Honestly,
magic
I
and
know this guy
science.
seems like he's got a
That's
good
big.
head on his shoulders. I think he's I'd vote for him.
Oh
I don't
no,
think
your
you
vote doesn't.
I don't think you vote
matter.
for a god emperor.
Yeah, but like I
Yeah,
would.
He just called the
you would.
I mean, he's got a cool. Look at his
The
sword.
Emperor
Look at
never
his
wanted to
sword.
be
Like
called.
that's. What else do you need?
That sword is actually one of the few things that could truly kill demons. Normally, when you kill demons in this world, like they come back later, but like no, once you kill that, they're dead. They're gone, which is pretty awesome. Based. He never wanted to be called a god though. That was his thing. The,
And he's
the
humble.
emperor believed that religion. Yeah, well, did that armor look humble
It
to
looks
you,
practical.
Don? He decided that there are no gods, there are no religions. You will follow me not because I am a god, but because I'm awesome. And it kind of worked for a while. He created 18 Primarchs, 18 sons. They all have their quirks and abilities,
Like the
but
Koopa, like
they
the
all were
Koopalings.
split off. Yes, the Primarchs are like the Koopalings. Sure, we'll go with that.
You jump
But
on their backs and
each Primarch has their own specialty, abilities, mutations. Like one was basically raised on a planet where it was gladiator pits, and he was raised horribly, and it was a nightmare, and he was basically filled with technology that makes him only experience anger. And his name is Angron, so that fits. He's not great.
I feel like that was a
There's
self-fulfilling prophecy naming your kid Angron.
Yeah. Lionel Johnson, he was basically dumped up on what's known as a death world, where there's just forests filled with monsters. And so he was surviving in that forest for a while until he was found by other humans who went basically on a crusade killing all the monsters. Keep in mind, these are not like little dudes. These are some pretty, like when I say, hang on, I have a size chart here for like a standard space marine versus a human.
Are they like
Here's a standard.
are they like gears or cogs?
No, this just grown muscle. So that is what a normal, like Astartes looks like. A normal space marine when you see them in the armor. I want to
Yeah.
show you guys just how big everybody else is. There you go. There's a better chart of just how big everyone is. That dude is 6 feet tall, and the Primarchs are all the way on the other side.
Yeah, this is
that's-
like this feels like Gears of War rules.
No, this was before Gears of War. Gears
Well,
of War.
I know I
forward.
know that. But yeah.
This is, and again, after that, one of the Primarchs, Horus, through some fault of his own, some fault of others, decided to turn on the Emperor, joined the powers and forces of chaos, and tried to destroy the Emperor's whole scheme, the whole shtick. And him and half of the other Primarchs, so out of the 18 Primarchs, 9 of them stayed loyal to the Emperor, 9 of them went with Horus, and that became known as the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy is where most of the books are focused on, but after that whole kerfuffle, the Emperor was almost killed. Many of his Primarchs were either injured, killed, or lost to the warp, which is basically a hell dimension. And the Emperor, was, while still barely clinging to life, was stuck on a golden throne, and that is where he sits to this day. And since then, the Imperium has been like decaying and rotting. Now people worship him as a god. Now people are religious zealots and freaks. If you say anything negative about the Emperor, you're dead. If you commit a crime in the Imperium, you will be shipped off to the Imperial Guards Penal Legion, used as fodder and killed. Earth is at a constant war. You're constantly fighting. Oh, sorry, it's not called Earth. It's Holy Terra now. And it's just war. You're fighting. That's almost what everyone's doing. It's awesome. Now,
Don,
Yeah,
are you still
yeah.
voting for this guy, Don?
I don't
Are you
know.
still voting for this
Maybe
guy?
I don't know.
You have to think. You have to
I really
think
have to
about
see
it
his.
now.
Yeah, I don't know about him quite as much.
got to see his business plans. So he's there. He's still very necessary because while he's sitting on that throne, he provides like a beacon for when you're traveling through space and through the warp, that hell dimension. He's a beacon. He helps guide people going through it. So now, who are they fighting? Who exactly is the Terra and the humans fighting? The biggest enemy is Chaos. Chaos is basically, imagine Satan. Now imagine 4 different Satans, all fueled by different things. You have Korn, who's fueled by bloodlust and violence. You have Zeech, who's fueled by change and sneakery. There's Slanesh, who's fueled by excess and desire. And Nurgle is fed by rot and death. So you'll have different humans and different other groups who will pledge their allegiance to him, to all these gods. And they are usually the biggest ones you have to deal with. But then you have a bunch of aliens to deal with. Basically, when they made Warhammer, they took all the fantasy magic-y races and just made them spacey. So you have the Eldar, which are basically space elves. You have the Sons of Votan, which are basically dwarves. They're the newest faction. You have the Orcs. We will talk about the Orcs because they
I
are
know a little bit about the
orcs
orcs,
and
and
they're
I do
awesome.
think they're very fun.
They're just space
The Orcs
orcs.
are the best faction, in my
Orcs
opinion.
with a
Oh, you have
K.
the Necrons, who are spooky, scary skeleton men that were there way before any of humanity was around, fighting gods and like killing stars. They're fantastically evil. The one race people really hate are the Tau. The Tau believe in the greater good. They believe in
Nerds.
every species should work together. Yeah, no, people call them weeaboo space communists because they have anime
Wait, are
mechs,
they
like they're not as
are the Tau
grimdark.
lizard people?
No, they look
Why have I
they're
always
when the
imagined the
orcs
Tau as
fight them,
lizard
they call
people?
them
I've never once looked. I know vague
no,
things about 40K, but I always thought they were lizard people for some reason.
no, they're like blue fish
Uh,
boys. That's usually what they're referred to as. But like they are fun. People don't like them that much because in the tabletop they were pretty broken for a time. Here, Chris, that's kind of what
no, they
the
are like
Tau look
lizard
like.
guys.
Yeah, no, the Tau Empire does recruit humans who are like, you know what? I'm sick for working under the heel of the Mechanicus. Oh, right, Mechanicus. The people who lived on Mars during the terrible times decided that they were, instead of like rising above it and like becoming better, devolved into worshiping machines and replacing their organs with mechanical parts. So to them, flesh is weakness, and they will replace almost every single part of their body with metal except their brain. They believe that a human spark is necessary for being closer to the machine god.
That
It's
sounds like a cop out because they couldn't go all the way.
no. They again, it's their belief system. The only reason, like
How
Imperium,
convenient.
the Imperium only tolerates their belief system because they make really good guns and they're really good at building stuff. It's amazing. Again, the whole point of this franchise is that everyone is some flavor of evil. Everyone is some kind of bad. Like even the Tau are basically brainwashing people, and everyone is equal under the Tau. You are fodder for them to use as they see fit. Like the Orcs, they just love killing stuff. Mechanicus, they will literally, instead of using AI, they use human brains. So if you're a criminal or you're just worth more dead than alive, they'll take you, cut you up, scoop out your brain, stick it in a door, and now your brain, for the rest of its existence, will be used as a sensor for opening doors and then closing doors. That's your life now.
As
It's
God intended.
as the God Emperor intended. Very good. You're learning. This is what makes it so appealing. People like the idea of getting to play as the bad guys. This franchise has been around for since the 80s. Games Workshop's the creators, they had a very interesting idea when it came to their game development, though. So they were known for their tabletop, but their video games, a little lacking. So in 2014, they made it very easy to gain their license. And so to this day, we now have a ton of different Warhammer 40K games. Some of these games you probably already have heard, things like Dawn of War, Dark Tide, Space Marine 2, Mechanicus, a lot of RTS, a lot of turn-based strategy. They've even they've stuck a toe in role playing when they did Rogue Trader. They've been working really hard recently to get video games out there, and now they have games like Space Marine 2. We have games like Dark Tide, games that are out there right now that are getting people more into this universe and getting them into it at a pace that they're pretty cool with. I mean, combine that with Henry Cavill's deal with Amazon, Henry Cavill, King of the Nerds. Yeah, it's getting bigger, and it's a really amazing franchise. But no one talks about all the cool biology stuff. That's what I wanted to bring up with y'all. There's a really neat stuff that goes on in the 40K world. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up our first subject for discussion. Let me see if I can find him in my pile. I grabbed like so many different weird pictures for this one to be like, all right, I need to explain this a little bit better. It is a Space Marine. Space Marines are the best weapon the Imperium has against their foes. So you do have the Astra Militarum. They are the ones who will. They're your rank and file soldier. You give them a las gun, which is basically a really cool laser gun that's very weak compared to everything else. You send them out there and you fight. But the Space Marines, they are the ones who are made in the Primarch's images. So the Primarchs have a gene seed of sorts, and you give that to a Space Marine, and they are capable of getting a whole lot bigger, a whole lot stronger. And you're basically taking like normal kids, because in order for the surgery to make a Space Marine happen, you have to take a small child, usually around 11 or 13 years old, put them through horrendous trials and terrifying surgeries, and then eventually you will get a Space Marine. And as you've seen, they are ridiculously huge. Depending on the kind of Space Marine, they might deal with some issues. For example, the Blood Angels are basically vampires. They're super chill until they start seeing blood. Then things can get a little bit hectic. Or you might be dealing with someone who is from a chapter connected
Quick
to the
question
Space
about
Wolves.
the Blood Angels. Is this like is
Yes.
this like genetically encoded, or do they just all agree that that would be a fun gimmick and like decide to do it?
Yes and no. So they are genetically coded for it, but eventually there came a point where the main chapters, the main 18 that were based on the Primarch, split up. A lot of them did to kind of do their own thing. And there are some from the Blood Angel side who are like, no, we must stand firm against the Red Thirst. And the others like, no, dig in, brothers. It makes us strong. This is great. Again, it really does depend. There are usually about 1,000 Space Marines in any given chapter. And there are millions of Space Marines out there. There are a lot, but they usually are spread all over the galaxy. When it comes to their organs, though, that's where I think I love the biology part, because when you're pumping these guys full of organs, you got some really neat stuff you're putting in there. So, for example, you're setting in the black carapace. So the black carapace is basically a dark piece of like plasteel, a tougher material under their skin that allows them to kind of be a whole lot tougher. So I sent a picture of like one of the series when they're implanting that in them. It's one of the last things that gets put into them. They also have something called the Belcher's gland, which allows them to basically take their saliva and it becomes venomous.
Oh, that's
So when a
fun.
Space Marine spits, oh yeah, no, when a Space Marine spits, it melts stuff. Yeah, there was at least once in the book where a Space Marine was being attacked by was it being attacked by somebody, and he just spits in her face and it melts, and it's horrifying. It's just terrifying stuff. But there was one organ I wanted to talk about because it was really there. It is the omophagia. So the omophagia is also called the remembrancer. Anytime a Space Marine eats something, it allows them to kind of learn or read that material, to learn more about that organism, to learn what it was feeling, what information it knows. If they eat something, they learn it. And so that's a really neat tool, but also really, really gross. With the Blood Angels, they have a really overreactive one. So if they eat something or drink blood, they get a whole lot of emotions pumped into them that makes them even more dangerous. It's pretty nasty stuff. And yes, there are scenes where they're like, "Oh, I found a dead body. Hang on, grab me a leg." And the Space Marines will eat it.
But then they get
Straight
knowledge,
up.
you know, so it's for science. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because back in the 1950s, this used to be how we thought flatworms were learning. So, I know you've seen one, Don. Have you seen what a flatworm looks like, Chris?
I could use a refresher.
Okay, let me go and grab one. Let me go grab them. They're great because they look dumb. There we go. And boop, here you go. One flatworm.
Yeah, it does look dumb.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool though. So there was an experiment done where they wanted to see how flatworms grow, because flatworms are able to regenerate. Like if you cut them up into pieces, they'll just start regenerating and making more flatworms. Like they're really good at regenerating. So they took a flatworm, they cut it up into a bunch of pieces, and they fed that flatworm to another flatworm. Now, back in the 50s, they thought and they thought they found in the study that if the flatworm ate other flatworms, it would learn what that flatworm knew. And that kind of blew people's minds. But James McConnell, who did the study, no one has been able to really like truly recreate it. And so it's some bad pseudoscience, but I think that's where they got the idea for making that weird organ as Space Marine. Like you take the idea of you eat something, you learn it. I think they just stole it from flatworms. Now, that's not how it really works. You want to know it does work though? Because we did do some more experimenting. We found there's some really neat stuff. All right, Chris, let's say hypothetically I cut off your head.
Okay.
It's off.
Wait,
Not
that's
much you can
illegal.
do.
Yeah.
That is illegal. But Chris, imagine you could grow it back.
Okay. So like a lizard tail.
Yes, except you would assume that if you're growing a whole new body, well, then that means I'd have to get a whole new brain and everything else. It turns out, even if you decapitate a flatworm, they will still learn. They still know the stuff that they learned, which is pretty incredible. Like that's
So it's like they store their knowledge in their belly.
Well, that's what the thinking was behind James McConnell's original thought, was that you could store intelligence in other parts of your body, like a cellular intelligence. And so that's where it's amazing stuff that the flatworms can do, but only the flatworms. I like to think of the Emperor of Man just looking at a petri, just going like, man, I wish my sons could do that. All right, let's go ahead and have meat stuff. It's pretty terrifying, but aside from that, the Space Marines, again, they have acid spit, they have an extra heart, they have extra lungs, they have super powered muscles, they have super powered vocal cords. Oh, they don't really need to sleep. They can digest just about anything. I mean, oh, right, this was a fun one. That was called the Lyman's ear, which basically means that they can't get any kind of dizziness or nausea, which is great because you're usually flying through the galaxy like a lunatic in some cases.
That's just practical.
Yeah, no, that's just practical. But again, they have a gene seed. They do have a special organ in their body that this gets implanted in them that pumps them through with all the information. So it's neat to think that there is that sort of thing that they can learn from, and they did take it from the worms. Now, I have talked an awful lot about humanity, but you know what? They ain't my favorite faction. We's talking about the orcs now. We are gonna. All right. So I want you to get a feel for who these people are. So, Chris, these are the orcs.
Those are
They're the
orcs,
best.
all right.
I mean that just looks like orcs with guns.
No, hang on. I have to say, all right. They's the best faction, lads. They talk like soccer hooligans from the 80s. It's
Okay,
fantastic.
that is an improvement on orcs, I think.
Yeah, no, and they don't even call themselves like any other. They call themselves the boys and the lads. They don't even have gender. They just agree that was the best way to call them. There are no female orcs. They're just orcs.
Much like flatworms.
Yeah.
And they.
Yeah, much like
Yes.
Flatworm.
Was everything in
just
this
like
universe
flatworms.
just
And
flatworm based?
apparently not. These guys are mushroom people. So orcs are based on mushrooms. And they mention this a lot in the series, in the franchise, because they love things like fungus beer. They release spores as they die. The orcs are by far the least evil of all the factions. They are the least evil.
That's a first.
They are okay. So
I mean, they're.
the Imperium is evil.
I think they're
because
nicer than
messed
high
up
elves in
zealots.
Skyrim.
Oh yeah, no. The Eldari, the space elves, are stuck up jerks who just think that they're better than everyone, even though their empire fell millions of years ago, and they also birthed Slanesh, she who thirsts. So thanks a lot, guys. Real bang up job you did there. Even things like the Tyranids, which we'll talk about in a bit, like they're just devouring everything because they're hungry. The Orcs are doing this for the love of the game. They just love to fight. They're awesome. I mean, it's not even like also that they're stupid. Like they're not smart. They can't say the word human, so they just call us humies. Like we're the humies to them.
I mean, that's just
They come with the amazing ability of if you get enough orcs together and they all believe something will work, it will work. Like there's just something it's amazing because like, okay, imagine if, like the best example I've ever heard was if an orc boss, like an orc, like a big orc is driving a car and the car runs out of gas and he thinks like, no, I definitely put gas in here, and starts it back up. There's a chance it'll start back up. Even their guns are like slapped together pipes and explosives that shouldn't work. When the orcs use them, they work because they believe they should. When anyone else tries using them or tries studying them, it's like, this is a pile of junk. How on earth did this thing even work?
Does that
The
function at all in the actual like tabletop game? Like if the like do you like roll on
You
belief?
personally have to truly believe. The dice know. The dice know if you do not believe.
That is actually one of the memes. It's like when an orc player starts rolling all sixes, it's like, oh, what's happening? He's starting to believe. So if you roll sixes, orcs have this. I'm not as familiar with the tabletop game, but basically the orcs, they don't have a lot of good aim. They basically just fire walls of death, but they are. If you get rolling pretty well, it can steamroll and just keep on going. It's pretty gnarly stuff, but they don't go away very easily. Even if you kill all the orcs on the planet, there are still some orcs. And that's been a problem for a lot of the galaxy. It's like, wait a minute, we killed all these guys. What do you mean they're still around? So in the third edition of the Codex, they created a little sketch. I don't know if this is canon. This is a good idea of how orcs grow. So when the spores go out, they'll land in a shady spot, and then they will start to morph and grow. And that's where orcs come from. If you do not burn the corpses, if you do not burn every spore you find, there is a chance that an orc
This
can come
I will
back.
say this drawing
Now,
reminds me of how like they thought spontaneous generation worked in the Middle Ages.
I think that was their idea when they made this. Like, that is very similar to what people used to
Also-
think, that if you just left rotting meat out,
Also,
maggots popped up.
Saruman just like pulling the orcs out of the mud goo.
Yeah, no, pretty much. Again, Games Workshop is weird because they get angry if anyone borrows their stuff, but they borrowed from everyone else, including Mother Nature at this point. So it's a weird relationship. But no, they work very similar.
So how
to
much shade do
fungus,
they need?
and
Are
I
they like a
think that's pretty
partial
neat.
shade, full shade? If they get too much sun on their mushrooms, do they die? What's the
Honestly, I don't think they need any shade, because even if you leave
Well,
them
this
on a
diagram
desert
shows
world
shade,
or
so
a
I didn't know what
frozen
the
wasteland,
husbandry of orc mushrooms were.
yeah, no, again, I don't think they need it. I think that's just the optimal conditions, more so than what they truly require. Like, this is how you get the best, fastest growing orc, but they can still do it just about anywhere. They are really hard to kill. Now, one orc isn't a problem. Like, they're big, they're dumb, they can rip you in half, but like a couple of shots to the dome, they're fine. They're known as the Green Tide for a reason. They will groove in groups called a wog, and a wog is their word for war. And that wog can be millions of orcs, tens of millions of orcs, all moving together for one singular purpose: to crump, to fight, and to occasionally loot. There are some of them that really like stealing stuff because it's shiny and explodes. But
I
as
find
far
a hard
as
time hating the orcs because they like shiny things and they operate on belief.
there's at least one group of orcs that all the orcs do hate. They're called the Blood Axes, and the Blood Axes are hated because they use strategy. Most orcs just like to charge at the problem and die because it's funny, but the Blood Axes will actually wear camo. They will be sneaky. They will place a bomb on a wall, run away, and blow up the wall instead of just charging at the wall. So all the other orcs hate them because they're like, oh no, they're too sneaky.
Look, I get it. Yeah,
No,
they think they're better than the other orcs. I get it.
Oh no, every orc thinks they're better than other orcs. If the orcs have no one to fight, they'll just fight other orcs. But I do want to touch a bit on the fungus part, because I think it's a really smart idea to make fungus creatures, because fungi are the underrated champs of survival. Case in point, one of the sea turtles at the sea turtle hospital had a pneumonia infection in their lung. We thought it was bacterial until we did some more testing and found that it was fungal. So this turtle had a fungal infection that it picked up from the ocean. If you're going to the deep ocean, if you're going into the air, if you're going into the soil, other living creatures, the highest points, lowest points, hottest points, coldest points, you will find fungi, and they can grow and adapt just about anywhere. It's what makes them so terrifying. It's why it's so hard to remove something like foot fungus, because it just keeps going. I do actually have, I found at least one diagram I wanted to show you about, where to go? All right, so I want you to compare that drawing you saw, that for the orcs, to this drawing of what it looks like when mushrooms reproduce. So it's very similar to how they did a pretty decent job of getting the idea going of where the mushroom will basically, the main organism will be underground, and the budding part you see with the mushroom, the cap, is just where the spores get released. So when an orc dies, it releases the spores, and they get into the soil, and they start growing. With mushrooms, it's very much the same. Mushrooms can reproduce sexually, but they can also just spread out through mitosis and use the hypaea. The hypaea are what look like roots, and they will spread out and just start sucking nutrients out of wherever they are at. Again, not all funguses work like that. Not all funguses use spores, but a good chunk of them do. In the case of orcs, instead of a mushroom crab that spreads more spores, you get an orc. And again, when they die, they will get more spores. What's pretty cool is that with the orcs, they do, when you get them together and you get a big enough orc, because that's how orcs deal with leadership. The biggest orc leads, because the biggest orc is the smartest orc. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten big. Simple logic. Works. Honestly, that might be that might be a better way to pick our global leaders. Like, no, give me the biggest one.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how humanity has operated for a long time.
And look where it got him. I mean, like, no, it got him pretty far. No, give me the big ones. Yeah, again, the orcs have it. The orcs figured it out. I will say the idea of a fungus getting so large that it's basically unstoppable is cool, because there are fungi that are so large that the single organism has been budding and spreading for miles, and there's at least one that may potentially weigh over 10,000 tons. It's absolutely massive. The orcs are great. The orcs are the best. No one is going to beat the orcs. But when Will and I first met, he told me about his favorite faction. We have to talk about the Tyranids. The Tyranids are space bugs. They are the second least evil. They are the
Do
second
they hate
least evil.
democracy
They have
like
one
the
goal.
other space bugs?
They don't care for democracy.
like 'em.
No. They're no, most people don't. That they only care for one thing: consume, to eat. Tyranids are basically giant space bugs, and they come in all shapes and all sizes. So I'm going to put a couple of them down here. So here you have, so here's a Hormigaunt. Sorry, but messing it up. Here's a Termagant. Can't talk today.
Bug raptor.
Yeah, no, it's a bug raptor. So incidentally, when you're looking at the bug raptor, that gun is also alive. The bullets it uses are also Tyranids. So the hive mind basically controls trillions upon trillions of Tyranids. Some are giant, horrifying space nautiluses that grab ships with tentacles. Some are microscopic. When a Tyranid devours a planet, it devours everything it can, from the humans who are living there to the plants to the animals, even the bacteria in the air. They have stuff for consuming that. When they eat it, they will generate it into more biomass that the hive mind can then use to make more Tyranids, and then go find something else to kill, and then something else, and something else. Occasionally, these are the, so hang on, let me get the right ones this time. So I believe I had some Hormigants here. So Hormigants are pretty common in Space Marine 2. So they are also bug raptors, but they don't have guns. They just come at you with claws. They're pretty rank and file. Yeah. But then you have things like Tyranid warriors, who they also are just, well, horrifying beyond all
that guy's
belief.
got a lot going on.
Again, yeah, that's again, the gun is alive and it's a symbiotic organ. So when it shoots at you, It is shooting burrowing bullets that will bite and eat your
I like how he's
insides
got like a
out,
tentacle
or
hand,
shoot acid.
hooves, and like praying mantis claws.
Mhm.
You know, he's very versatile.
Yeah, he's got like everything. He's everything.
Yeah,
And he's
no,
got
they
these skulls.
don't mess around. They do not ever mess around. You have things like the lictor. So lictors are like scouts who they'll send out to go and deal some damage with other things. You will have hive tyrants, you will have bio titans, you will have all kinds of crazy, terrifying bug powers, all warped into just a horrifying entity to consume and destroy anything it touches. You even have some. Actually, I didn't have this in my notes, but I'm going to pull them up anyway. So the most insidious of them is what's known as a gene stealer. So see if this sounds familiar. The gene stealers will attack you, implant you with an organism, and then take over your mind and
Like
have
a
you do its
cordyceps.
bidding. Sound familiar to anybody?
Like the
I said like cordyceps.
yeah, or
mushroom.
things like horsehair worms
Yep.
that drive like grasshoppers to water.
Yeah, so this is a
Oh,
gene
he looks
stealer.
slimy.
So what happens is a gene stealer will find a human. It will inject them with the substance that will start changing their DNA, and then it will disappear. It'll try and hide. That human will go back to its world or whatever, and it will be the instinct to reproduce will really kick in, and that can be the start of a gene stealer cult. So basically, you'll start getting mutated humans over generations that will call out to the hive fleet once there's enough of them and literally destabilize the government, destroy the infrastructure. They're basically bug terrorists, and they just go in and wreck stuff until the hive fleet shows up. And in their twisted bug mind, it's like, yes, the great gods above will save us. They will protect us. It's wild stuff. But it is pretty cool to think about all the different variants. I like thinking about the fact that we do have insects with guns. Don't get me wrong, we have EU social creatures on our planet. The ants and the bees gets a lot of credit. No one
To the
talks
face
about the
gun termite?
termites. I feel the space. Yeah, we got to talk about the gun termites. We've mentioned them before, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up a picture again because I think they're neat. So termites, just like ants, have developed a lot of crazy, weird, terrible stuff to protect themselves from predators. Some of them have more massive jaws. Others are better at skidding. Some organisms literally blow up. Meanwhile, the termites decided that I am going to have a gun at the front of my head, and I am going to shoot a chemical spray at anything that wants to try and hurt me or my nest as I eat leaf litter. Here is actually a real picture of them. Look at them. Just a
We got big
horrifying,
heads.
weird little freak.
Look like the Hershey. Looks like they got Hershey Kiss heads.
Yeah, that Hershey Kiss is filled with acid and death. So I love the idea that there are bugs out there that do have guns. I mean, now if we want to talk about the rest of them, yeah, we have the different parasitoids. We have praying mantises with sharp limbs that can cut things up. There's so many terrible things that like the Tyranids copy from because they're basically just harvesting DNA and learning as they go. Like this is not like a dumb intelligence. This thing is like literally one of the books I've read. Like it has a hatred. It can feel hate. It can want revenge. So yeah, the nids are horrifying bug monsters. I love the fact that they are just going out and consuming stuff because that is very similar to how army ants behave. Many different ant species will just go out, kill everything, and then just keep moving. I'm pretty sure that is what they base their ideas on, more so than ripping off aliens and more so than ripping off everything else. I think that they did a really good job in taking the sheer horror that you would have at ant size, having to deal with a group of army ants. Like this is exactly what it would be like. Just terrible stuff. Now, I
feel
don't
like the
know.
Tyranids are my least favorite of what we have talked about.
They are horrifying. You should be scared and afraid at all times because they are the worst. Do we have enough time for one more bit? Do we have
Yeah.
enough time? Okay. So there is one group of humans that decided to live on a death world. Death worlds are basically any world that are deemed too hostile for people, but people will still try and live there anyway. Catachan is basically home to space Australians because the humans who live there are the most terrifying on the planet, given
They all
that
do
their
space
entire
crimes first to
ecosystem
get sent
wants
there?
to kill them. No, they chose to live out there, and only the strongest survive. And I'm gonna find a Catachan soldier so you can understand what like a Catachan looks like. They all basically look like Rambo, only they're just. It's easier to just show you. Like they're all 6'5". They're all super muscular. Like literally, they crave nothing but living on horrible, terrible places in order to just kill giant monsters. At one point, actually at multiple points, when Xenos aliens
They
have
really
tried to
did Rambo. They
invade, or
did
like
really
the
go for the
forces of
Rambo aesthetic with the red bandanas on these guys.
They have tried, like, multiple factions, including Chaos and Demons, have tried raiding the place, and they have failed. Not because just the Catachans are awesome, but because the wildlife keeps killing them. I mean, okay, listen to this. So this is the first thing on the notable flora. So I'm going to read you the description. It's called a brain leaf. A brain leaf, a carnivorous plant, is actually a small tree, not particularly conspicuous on Catachan, but one that is able to attach its tendrils to spine and brain of any animal, taking over their body. The creature may actually be genetic offshoot of the Tyranid leech. So yeah, you can just walk in and just have your brain taken. Just done. We scroll down, find another one. Oh look, the sucker tree. The sucker tree is a carnivorous plant, fairly innocuous looking. The unturned eye. It is simply it looks like a simple fungal growth. However, the trunk can twist and turn when it detects prey, bending over, dropping its suckers on top of the heads of its victim, and draining them of their life fluids, then flinging the corpse away to ensure that future victims are not made suspicious of the pile of bodies.
Honestly, very smart.
Yeah.
That's the tree. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have our fair share of smart plants. We see sunflowers are able to move with the sun to get the most energy. We have seeds that explode. We have plants that are venomous. We have organisms like this. That was just the plant life. The most notable thing on the planet is what's known as a Catachan devil. Now, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this picture because it is delightfully terrifying just as an image on its own. It's a rough sketch, but it's still pretty terrifying.
That looks like a horrible scorpion.
Cool. How big do you
It's
think
gonna
it
be
is?
like 90 feet long.
Too big. Yeah, we're like a school
Longer.
bus.
It's basically the size of a train, like a train with a bunch of
Fun.
cars.
Yeah, it's kind of got
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I think it's Brontoscorpio, the giant prehistoric sea scorpion guy, but also with like a centipede head.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is a horrific creature that should not be trifled with. But meanwhile, the people of Catachan are dealing with these things on the daily. Like, they can destroy your whole town. Okay, this is the last one I'll talk about because we are going a bit over. The fandom loves this organism because there's a YouTube series that made fun of it. The Great Barking Toads. So the Great Barking Toad, it's very small. It is basically the size of a bullfrog. Just sits there doing its own thing. Now, I want you to guess what happens if you scare this thing.
It's gonna be
what
like a
happens if you
400
scare this-
decibel shockwave.
Okay, so we're going with shockwave. Chris, what do you think?
I'm gonna go with something more squid related, in that it like shoots a cloud of acid.
It was barking,
or
right? So
something.
would it not bark really loud?
Yeah, it's a barking frog. Okay, combine your answers and you kind of got it right. Whenever they feel threatened, they explode in a crowd of, and I quote, virulent toxins which kill anything within a wide 1 kilometer area, including the toad itself.
Oh, that's so far. That's so far
Even-
for what you said. It's like the size of a basketball.
Yeah, this thing is basically like a basketball bomb. Like it just
Wow.
got 1 kilometer bomb and you take it off. Just gone.
Jeez.
Everything dies. Even the trees that are killing people, dead. Even Space Marines in power armor, Ceramite power armor, which can shrug off a whole lot of damage, is melted away into nothing. Like, there is no way of actually stopping this thing because all it's going to do is just melt it away. It is known as the most toxic and dangerous creature in all of the galaxy. And if this hour or so of me talking has shown you anything, the galaxy is a terrifying place. So that's my little shtick on 40K. Thoughts, emotional outburst, questions, comments,
I need to
concerns?
play Space Marine too.
Yeah, you will appreciate it. I will say, listening to the guardsmen have their speech because they're from Cadia. The Cadians are like one of the most famous for lore reasons. I'm not going to get into it. It's powerful stuff. Don't mention their home planet. Their speeches are great. I just love sitting there as a Space Marine listening to them because it's awesome. Yeah, it's a great game. Chris, what were you thinking?
I was thinking that the orcs actually seem really cool.
They do have an orc game out there that I'm pretty sure you can play pretty easily. What was it? I had it. It was once they were trying to get more shooter games out, and they started pumping those pretty recently. Oh yeah, Warhammer 40K, Shoota's blood and teeth. Oh, I forgot to mention. Orcs use their teeth as currency.
Like their own teeth, or they collect
So
them?
if you punch an orc and take
Fun.
yes. Yeah, so there are some orcs that produce more teeth than other orcs, and they're the richest orc. They're the bad moons. They love having shinier and more explosive toys. But yeah, no, if you want to play a shooter game with orcs, that's out there. They're also making an orc racing game because there's a group of orcs called the Evil Sons, where they're also known as speed freaks. Their whole thing is you've got to go fast as possible. If I can't catch the horizon, I'm not going fast enough. So there's a ton of stuff. If anyone wants to get into Warhammer, I will say the tabletop is disgustingly expensive. It will cost you hundreds of dollars to get in, and then you also have to paint the minis. The video games, much easier. And I never play the tabletop. I just read the lore because I think it's fun. But no, that's Space Marine. And again, thank you for letting me rant about it. I don't get a lot of chances to talk about Warhammer 40K. So thanks, guys. I
We're
appreciate it.
Space Marines of the Infantry Corps.
Honestly, if there were a group of, I'm trying to think, the Blood Angels would definitely sing. The Emperor's Children are evil, twisted ghouls. They would sing that song. No, not the hang on, sorry, my alarm went off. Not the what were they called? Oh God, yeah, no. There's one guy called Conrad Kurz with the Primarch of the Night Lords. The Night Lords are basically awful human beings who like use fear. Like imagine if the Joker and the Batman got power armor together. It's horrifying stuff. They're just the worst. Ugh. But they're also the best because they're the worst. That's kind of the point. If you like being the worst and being the best at the worst, that's kind of what Warhammer is. So again, thank you guys for listening to me rant. Chris, are we going to be doing an episode for the holiday, or this is our last one of the year?
This is our last one of the year. We are
This is our
not
last
back
one.
until 2025.
I guess, yeah. Alrighty then, guys. Another year around the sun. Heck of a
What
time.
do you know?
Thank you guys so much for listening. We're still alive. Hallelujah. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this with me. Thank y'all so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night. We will see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Happy New Year,
Bye.
everyone.